Hey everyone, Professor Snart here checking in. It's Wednesday, September 18th, I should say, as I'm recording this, which puts us right at our main due date for Unit 2. Finishing everything up by this Wednesday, September 18th. Reply component due no later than Friday, and then I'll talk us through a little bit of Unit 3 here. So again, like I'll remind, probably too much, keep your eye out for a poetry event, right, well in advance of Unit 10, where you'll have to be reporting out on it. If you do discover one, you can jump into our poetry events thing here. It looks like someone has posted something really cool. I've never heard of this before, but it looks awesome. Allows those under 25. Workshop. Wow. What a great opportunity. So again, I don't know who posted this, but thanks for doing it. And then I would follow the link just to double check the details or whatever, but great. So if you know of something in your neighborhood or not in your neighborhood, but someone relatively close by, in our Chicagoland area, whatever, feel free to, post it here so we can gather some of this stuff as we go so people have some options to choose from. Okie doke, so a quick look then at our Unit 2, starting with our first reading/listening assignment. Our terms collaboration, again, just a pretty, academic sort of exercise, getting some literary terminology under our belt to help us, with the works that we read in class, with some of the analysis that we do or the discussions that we have. And then this poetry Padlet assignment, looking for poetry out there in the world. And just glancing at these, looks good, right? We can see examples of, this one's a little hard to read, but we could probably make it bigger, of how poetry is like so everywhere in terms of words used to affect in a sort of visual space, whether it's digital or, like most of these so far, a physical space. Make sure that you've added your name. I'm seeing like Chris is here, Corinda's here, Jasmine here, that's good. If you realize that you forgot, you can always just email me and let me know. Yeah. See you later, alligator. Good one. As a UF grad, University of Florida, Gator, I'm particularly pleased at that one. Ah, look at that. That's amazing. Somewhere up there. That's good. I wonder what that says. Anybody know? Okay, so these are looking good, right? And we begin to understand that poetry is all over the place when we understand it, not just as like, a thing in your literature textbook, but as the use of words for their intense impact in that visual space. So it's not just like lines of like sentences, right? It's graphic design is fundamentally like poetry, or vice versa, I guess you might say. These are looking really good. Good one. All right, so these look terrific. I can't wait to dive a little deeper into those. Let's look at Unit 3. So we're going to look at a pretty common form of poetry, the sonnet. I'm sure you've run into these before. We have a variety of them that we're going to read, way back to like the famous Shakespearean one, and then a few slightly more contemporary ones. Billy Collins, formerly the poet laureate of the U.S., wrote a sonnet called Sonnet that's kind of also about sonnets, making fun of them a little bit. William Wordsworth, 19th or late 18th, early 19th century British Romantic poet. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Many people know this poem, How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways, but don't realize it's a sonnet, so oftentimes the form can actually fade into the background a little bit. And then one of my favorite both authors and works of hers, Edna St. Vincent Millay, 20th century American author. This is actually, this particular line from this particular sonnet is one of the best teaching examples of iambic pentameter, which is the meter that the sonnet uses, which for me is like the hardest part of the rules of the sonnet for people to follow, to understand, and then replicate. I won't get into it here, but you can certainly do some background research about sonnets, noting that there are two basic types, the Shakespearean or the Elizabethan sonnet, the English sonnet, and then the Italian or the Petrarchan sonnet, named for Petrarch, the guy who is actually mentioned here in Collins's sonnet as well. There's a little slide deck here with the rules. This is the Shakespearean sonnet and a sonnet by Shakespeare. So I've tried to color code it a little bit and label it so you get kind of like the rules that make the sonnet form. It's always 14 lines. It's technically divided. In fact, if you go back far enough into the sonnet form, they were almost written like mini essays, the way that we would write an essay. Our first introduction kind of lays out a premise. We have a few what you might think of as paragraphs of development, and then a final summation. So they were actually used to put forward arguments. Less so maybe these days, and we certainly don't have to necessarily do that, but it is interesting to look at how the sonnet form actually was used in the way that we would use an essay form today, for example. You'll notice how the rhyme scheme works, where each of the quatrains or groups of 4 is sort of divided here. So we don't have rhyming across the quatrains. We have this final couplet or set of 2 lines that rhymes together. So the similar letter means that those words rhyme. Mines, fines, love, remove, kind of what we would call an off rhyme or a slant rhyme. It doesn't sound exactly the same. Unlike mark, bark, shaken, taken, those are what we call perfect rhymes because they sound more or less identical, right? And you can see cheeks, weeks, perfect rhyme, come and doom, more of that off or slant rhyme. Sometimes it has to do just with the simple fact of pronunciation across all these hundreds of years. But many poets will use the slant rhyme to kind of like give the sense of musicality or that echoing effect or that rhyming effect without it being so perfect that sometimes too many perfect rhymes at the end of lines, it begins to sound too almost like childish or sing-songy or like too happy sometimes. So there's the whole rhyme scheme. There's the 14 lines divided into the 3 quatrains or 3 sets of 4 plus that final couplet. And then the hardest part, I think, is the iambic pentameter, which is mostly what I cover in this video here, which is why I'm not going to repeat all that stuff right now. So I really walk you through specifically and using this particular line or sonnet to really try to drive home that iambic pentameter, the metrical device that shows up in the sonnet. The other funny thing is that despite the fact that we're studying the sonnet as a form with rules to follow, you'll notice as you read through these that almost all sonnets break or bend at least some of those rules, which is why we might read something like "How do I love thee" and like not even realize it's a sonnet or that it's in a poetic form. We just read it like as lines of poetry. So your assignment then is either going to be like really exciting to you or really horrifying, but hopefully you can get into the spirit of the thing. You are just going to pick one of the sonnets assigned for this unit and record yourself reading it. I personally feel like it's a really great exercise in understanding the form, especially the metrical device, by reading a sonnet, because the last thing you want to do is overemphasize the meter in a way that you're reading it like a weird kind of like robot machine thing, which is part of what I do in this video, maybe the most annoying thing that I do in that video. But we want to get beyond that, right? We want to recognize how the rhythm works in the poem, but not read it in a super mechanical way. We want it to sound natural. So you could be on camera as you're recording yourself, since there'll be like a video component to this. But if that idea is just like totally not appealing to you, then figure out something else to creatively record so it's not you on camera. And this is the part of the assignment that I like, because you really have to kind of like understand not even the message of the poem, if you want to call it that, but like the overall atmosphere, what you feel it's trying to, the effect that you feel like it's trying to have on you. What mood does it put you in, or what kind of ideas does it conjure up, or images does it conjure up for you? And so you can use that to really drive your creative choices here when you're doing the recording part. It's almost like a form of analysis, but instead of like reading the poem and writing a boring essay, you're reading the poem and producing your own creative work, kind of like in response to that poem. So you still have to have an understanding of the poem and like a reaction to it. That's again why it's good that you can choose from any of the ones that are offered here, because some you'll probably like better than others. That's the way it goes. We want to ultimately build out our portfolio to include the video of either you on screen or just you talking with something else on screen. You can figure that out. If you're really stuck on the technology part of it, by all means reach out to me and let me know, and I can maybe offer some advice or make some suggestions. Don't just record yourself like reading from the book or from the screen. That's like not the spirit of the thing. And so I get that we're not Shakespearean actors here, but you do kind of want to perform the sonnet, like put some feeling into it. Don't just read it like words in an assignment or text on a page. Actually try to get into the spirit of the thing. Again, I feel like it's a creative way of engaging with the works that we're looking at for this class, but also a really productive way. It's not like creative instead of being analysis of the poetry. It's being creative as a way of analyzing, engaging with the work. So again, hopefully it's kind of appealing just because it's a little different, something interesting to do. It's super cool to once we have some people doing it, you can visit people's portfolio pages and see what they've done, all the creative choices people make, some of the really great performances that people do, and all that kind of stuff. So there is, down here somewhere, the usual reply component. Again, keeping in mind that we're being really conscious that people are, sort of putting themselves out there creatively, so we're not going to become like film critics all of a sudden. We want to really celebrate the cool creative choices people make, or the effort they put forward in a performance, or whatever the case might be. Okay. So again, not really a huge assignment, but because there's the technology component, it can be a little bit more time consuming than something more straightforward. So again, if you're kind of stumped on how to do it, just reach out to me and be as creative as you can with what's on camera, and really kind of get into the performance of the whole thing. That's the best part of this. Okay. So other than that, hopefully you are kind of getting used to how our course is set up, where to click to find whatever you might need, the due date structure and all that kind of stuff. And I will check back in a few days, and by all means, if you have questions or concerns, just be in touch with me.